Okay, guys, here I got some more inequalities, some big guys, and I'm going to solve these out for you. And then I'm also going to show you in Desmos how we can use Desmos to help us solve inequalities as well, and look at the solution that way. Okay, so looking over here at number one, we got -2 times the group 4x plus 1 is less than or equal to 4 times the group 5 minus x. Forgot my number lines. There they are. Okay, so number one, I am going to solve this out, but first I'm going to distribute, right? I have two things to distribute, one on each side, and I'm going to multiply. So that's going to be -2 times 4x, -2 times 1. Okay, so that results in -8x minus 2. Okay, and again, I said this inequality sign kind of serves as kind of the barrier between the two sides, just like an equal sign does with an equation. Okay, but make sure you keep track of what that sign is, because I said in the last video too that sometimes that sign can change. Okay, anyway, so I got 4 times 5 is 20, and then 4 times -1x, so 4 times -1, -4x. Okay, so there is distribution happening. Okay, and here's another thing that's helpful. Okay, I told you when we learned how to solve these multi-step equations that it's helpful to cancel out. Once you get here and there's nothing left to simplify on each side, it's helpful to cancel out the variable term on the right side. And that's going to be really helpful to us here as well. Okay, so I'm going to plus this 4x because it's minus 4x, and that'll cancel that. I'm going to plus 4x to both sides. Okay, and I just have to add it to the other x term because it's not like terms with this one. And I do that, and I'm left with -4x minus 2 is less than or equal to 20. Okay, and then I'm going to go from there, right? My x is here, and I'm trying to get that by itself. And so from here, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I do that, and I have -4x is less than or equal to 22. And then my last step here, this is -4 times x, so I cancel out the multiplication with division. I divide both sides by -4. Okay, but remember, your rule with inequalities is when you divide or multiply by a negative on both sides, that means the sign is going to flip. Okay, so it was less than or equal to, and for my answer, it's going to be greater than or equal to. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. Okay, but my final answer is x is greater than or equal to 22 divided by -4 ends up giving me a -5.5. Okay, a decimal, but that's all right. These number lines are here because, right, this is x is greater than or equal to -5.5 is kind of, right, there's lots of numbers that are greater than -5.5, right? So x could be a lot of different numbers. It's not just one solution, like an equation, solving an equation. There's lots of different answers. So visually, we can kind of show that with a number line, okay? And so there's two things to worry about there. Is it an open circle or a closed circle? And then do I draw my line right or left, okay? And so I like to deal with my circle first. So I tell my kids if there is an extra line under the inequality, then there's going to be extra filling in your circle. And we have that here. And so I'm going to go here to -5.5. That's between -5 and -6. I'm going to draw a closed circle right there. Okay, the closed circle because x is greater than or equal to -5.5. So a -5.5 could be what x is. It could be that or anything above that. You look at the arrow, right? The inequality sign kind of is an arrow pointing in the direction that you should go in, right? So this is an arrow pointing to the right, and so I'm going to draw my arrow here to the right. And what that shows us is that x could be any of these numbers, and it doesn't just stop at 7, it goes on forever and ever and ever, okay? So x could be -4, -1, 3, 7, 100, a million, and so on. Number 2, big guy, right? 7x minus 4 minus 10x is less than -7 plus 3 times the group 2x minus 5. A lot going on, okay? So we're going to have a lot of steps to solve this, okay? But just, again, do one thing at a time. write nice and neat with these big problems so that you don't, again, lose track of anything, okay? And I like to separate with big problems too. I like to separate my steps with these horizontal lines, kind of when I do my math. That helps too to organize, okay, as well as this vertical line, right? So I'm gonna do distribution first, okay, because that is a good step one, just to kind of simplify. Okay, so I'm going to do that here. I have some simplifying I can do here for number 2, but like I said, I'm just going to do one step at a time. So I'm going to keep this left side the same. 7x minus 4 minus 10x is less than. And so many kids, the common mistake, this is really easy to do, is they see, oh, negative 7 plus 3, that's negative 4. I can add those. Okay, but again, order of operations. Order of operations says I multiply this 3 before I would add these. Okay, so don't add negative 7 and 3 because it's being multiplied. So it stays negative 7, but it becomes 3 times 2x would be 6x, and then 3 times negative 5, negative 15. Okay? All right, so I distributed, and now I look at both sides. There's a lot of terms on both sides, right? And so I want to combine any of those without canceling it. I'm not canceling it. I'm just going to combine on either side so that I can make it a little simpler, make it a little bit less terms, okay? And on this left side, I have a 7x, and so this negative goes with the 4, so I can kind of ignore that, and I have a negative 10x, okay? So I have a 7x and I have a negative 10x, so if I combined those, I would get negative 3x, okay? 7x minus 10x, negative 3x. And then this minus 4 is there as well, and that's not a like term, so I didn't need to combine that, okay? And then here on the right, again, it remains less than, but again, I have this negative 7, I have 6x, and I have negative 15. So only one term has an x, but 2 of them don't. So those 2 that don't are like terms, okay? So I can kind of ignore that positive 6x, and I have negative 7 minus 15. So negative 7 minus 15 would be negative 22, but then that plus 6x comes down. Okay, so I didn't cancel anything. I didn't like add negative, I didn't add 10 to both of these to cancel that. Okay, you don't need to cancel to combine these because they're already together on the same side. It's just kind of combining them to go take it from 2 terms to 1 term. Okay. All right. Now I've simplified everything that I can. Okay. And so now it's time to cancel. Okay. And so I have a variable term here on the right, but I'm going to minus 6x to both sides. And I get negative 9x minus 4 is less than negative 22. Okay, combine these two. And then again, I only have 1x now, and that's what I'm trying to get by itself. And so I try to cancel out these other numbers on this side. So I plus 4 to both sides. That cancels that out, and I'm left with negative 9x is less than negative 18. Okay, and my last step here is to divide by this negative 9. Divide both sides by negative 9. Okay, and I get x is, remember, I divided by a negative here, so I need to flip this. It was less than, now it is greater than. X is greater than negative 18 divided by negative 9, positive 2. I hope that you would recognize that this would flip even without me saying it, right? But yes, I divided by negative 9. That's what made this flip from less than to greater than. Okay? And then lastly, I have a solution of x is greater than 2. Okay, x is greater than 2. So what does that mean? That means I draw on my number line an open circle, not a closed one like this, because it doesn't have that extra line underneath, right? This is just x is greater than 2, not greater than or equal to. So it's an open circle pointing to the right, okay? X is greater than 2, this arrow points to the right. And all the numbers that are greater than 2 are that away. So x could be not 2 exactly, but 3, 4, 5, 10, 100, a million, etc. Okay? So there's those, okay? And now I'm going to go into Desmos and show you how Desmos can be helpful with these too. So stay tuned. Okay, everybody, we are here in Desmos. I'm going to show you what it can do in terms of some inequalities. Okay, so I've got these inequality problems here on the right? And these are actually examples of old Virginia SOL questions that were asked about inequalities. But kind of like with equations, if you just type in, so I'm just going to type in that number 3 here, exactly how it looks, 4x minus 8. And then if you go in your keyboard here, you see that all the inequality symbols are there. Okay. If you're using a computer, you can do the less than or greater than just by pressing the keys, but yeah, they're there too. 4 times 6x plus 9. Okay, and when you do that, you see the graph is kind of shaded here. And we're going to talk about this more when we talk about graphing inequalities, what the shading means and all that. But what the important part is that you see, kind of like, again, with solving equations, you see that it has a vertical line right there at 9, 0. And so what that's telling you is that the answer is going to be 9, or the when you solve, you get the x value being 9. But again, what's important here too is the shading. Okay, is again, we'll talk about exactly what it means later on, but you see that it's to the left of this line. Okay, so kind of like the number lines that we did, this would be kind of the same way as saying 9 and below that, right? You see that it's not the numbers above 9, 10, 15, 20, but it's the numbers below the 9 that are shaded to the left. Okay, so that would imply that it is less than. Okay, so if I was doing this problem, I would be putting C as an answer. Okay, x is less than 9 based on this graph. So it's nice. Desmos can take care of it all for you. And again, the graph is a little different than our number line, but that is okay. Gives us what we need. Okay, so if I do the same thing for number 4, just to show this, negative 3 times x plus 1, and if we have that less than or equal to, so again, you can press this, less than or equal to there, or what you can do is, if you're using a keyboard like I am, you can do less than, and then you press the equals button, and it kind of automatically puts that equal sign underneath it, which is cool. And that is less than or equal to 15. Okay, so again, let's look at our graph here. And again, this is a multiple choice problem. So we look at this and we see first, okay, my vertical line here is at negative 6. Okay, so if I'm doing this multiple choice problem, I know it can't be A or B because those are positive 6. But again, it's either C or D, and then so I have to answer, is it greater than or equal to or less than or equal to? Okay, and so you look at that, and again, it's all about where the shading is compared to the vertical line here. And the shading is to the right, or to all the numbers greater than negative 6. Okay, and so that would be letter C here as well. One other thing with graphs, again, much more detail will be spent on this when we do graphing inequalities later on, but notice, if you notice number 3, when I graphed that, it had a dotted line here. For number 4, when I graphed it as a solid line, okay, that happens because of the equal to. Okay, that's kind of the graph's way of like, you know how we, on the number line, we did an open circle and a closed circle. That's kind of the same as it's doing a dotted line or a solid line, because a solid line is kind of saying, okay, negative 6 is included as an answer here, right? It has an equal to. But if I got rid of that equals and I just had just less than, it's a dotted line. And that would be the same as our open circle, kind of saying, okay, negative 6 would not be included. So just an explanation of what that dotted versus solid is. Okay, now last one, number 5, and you are not given multiple choice options here, so this would be a tougher problem that you would have to solve if it weren't for Desmos. But we have Desmos, and we can do it on here. So 6x minus 11 minus 13x is less than 7 minus 5x. And again, same thing, gives us this beautiful blue color, and we see that it is the vertical line here at negative 9. So if I was writing this, I would be saying x is greater than negative 9 as my answer. Again, 2 parts to that. It's a dotted line. Again, it doesn't have an equal to underneath my inequality symbol there, so I know it's just going to be either greater than or less than. Again, negative 9 because that is where my line is. That's the x value there. And it is greater than and not less than because the shading is to the right of that line, or that arrow pointing to the right. Okay, so that's a little taste of what Desmos can do, and that is all. So thank you very much.